The Pac-12 broke its silence by announcing that it has a TV deal, or at least an anchor partner in a TV deal in CBS. I'm John Canzano. He's Jon Wilner. We're here to break it down. Wilner, let's just go rapid reaction. As you saw the deal, CBS plus the Pac-12 looks like it'll be the conference championship games in football and in basketball, and then a minimum of 3 other games in the regular season in football and basketball, with some undisclosed number of games on CBS Sports Network. What was your reaction as you saw the deal unfold here?
Well, there's a lot we don't know. We don't know more than we do know at this point, which is okay. I had a couple reactions. One was it's really good for Pac-12 basketball because maybe better for basketball than football because CBS is such a critical piece of the media ecosystem in college basketball since it has had the tournament for so long. Its studio shows, its analysts, very influential on the basketball side, a little bit less so on football. Football is dominated by ESPN and Fox. CBS, though, is a huge player in basketball. And Pac-12, the rebuilt Pac-12 in basketball is going to be pretty good, maybe even better than the rebuilt Pac-12 in football.
Yeah, my quick takeaway was you're talking about big CBS having the championship games and big CBS and Paramount simulcasting a minimum of 3 games in the season, and a minimum jumped out at me because I thought, gosh, if the conference is really good, if Boise State's really good, for example, in an Ashton Genty type way in a season, I could see CBS coming in and going, hey, we want to carry a few more of those games. It gives some room for upside. Also, the CBS Sports Network piece is interesting. I went back and looked at viewership of the Pac-12 network versus CBS Sports Network, and it looks like you're looking at a multiple of like 4 or maybe 5 in cases. So you've got some broader exposure there. If you're the Pac-12 and you're looking for that exposure piece that you and I have talked about, CBS provides that. It did kind of jump out to me that, they want to view this as a cornerstone or an anchor partner, and they roll this piece out first. We'll get into more of that in a bit, but I think it leaves room for some other partners to be involved.
The word anchor is interesting because, it's not like there's a huge array of games on linear CBS, right? Over-the-air CBS. But when you're adrift, you're looking for an anchor, and the Pac-12 has kind of been adrift. That was my perspective. I know there's a range of reactions out there, and I think it just depends on how you're looking at it, right? You could say this is kind of like the Mountain West current deal with CBS. Yeah. So is the new Pac-12 just the Mountain West on steroids? That there's an argument to be made there. At the same time, 21 months ago, the Pac-12 was given up for dead. So from that perspective, it's a pretty good deal for them.
Yeah, I think it's a killer for the Mountain West, because if you're the Mountain West and you thought you were going to keep CBS and CBS Sports Network as part of your future TV deal, looks to me like that CBS has decided they're betting on the new world Pac-12 in that way. I also think it's interesting that you brought up basketball, because immediately we all go to football, and I have people immediately doing the math going, wait a minute, that's not very many games. It leaves a lot of tonnage for other partners like the CW or ESPN, and we'll get into that in a second. But I think that, CBS has that 12:30 Big Ten game. I could see them using that as a launch pad for the Pac-12 game later in the day. I could see a little bit of Pac-12 After Dark branding going on some of those night games on a Friday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I think this is a win for the Pac-12. I do think it's going to be greeted in other circles as underwhelming, because people are going to go, well, it's not ESPN. It's not, but I think it gives that exposure piece, and it gives kind of that CBS stamp of approval for the Pac-12 conference. But question for you, like, why do you think they rolled it out in pieces? I have my theories, but I want to hear yours.
Well, I certainly think that they knew that people wanted to hear something, and it had been taking a long time, and these things are complicated. And I mean, it could have been a month that they were just trying to cross a couple T's or dot a couple I's, right? With the legal piece. This is not, a memorandum of understanding. This is the whole deal's done. The long form piece is done. Maybe it took a while and they just knew, hey, we got to get something out there. We got to get a piece of good news out there.
Yeah, I think they needed to break that silence, right? And they
Yeah.
needed to give Pac-12 fans who have been wringing their hands for a couple of years now, needed to
Yep.
give them some proof of performance for, hey, we've actually got this piece done and we're really proud of it. They left some ambiguity with, like, an undisclosed number of games on CBS Sports Network. I think one of the possibilities here is that the other deals are just not done. And
Oh,
so,
yeah.
I see a real aversion from the Pac-12 to announcing exactly how many games it's going to be on CBS, because they're in the marketplace with other games. And I think they're still finalizing some of those deals. And you're not seeing any financial terms, certainly.
Right.
It tells me that may not be done. I think also keep in mind there's mediation going on with the Mountain West. And
Yes.
I'm not sure the Pac-12 wants to be out here waving their deals in the face of the Mountain West while they're trying to
Yep.
negotiate. So I think getting this one out now sort of locks down, hey, we've got some momentum. We've been doing stuff behind the
Yes.
scenes. We're really proud of this deal, proof of performance. And then it gives them some room here to grow with maybe some other partners.
Well, the other thing
Yeah.
too is,
Yeah.
like, there's some uncertainty tied to the number of conference games, which is tied to the number of schools, right?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
that's a whole nother piece of this. So
Yeah.
again, there's a lot more unknowns still than knowns, but they do at least have, a major media partner.
Yeah, and I was told by one media world executive, one source who told me, I said, "Hey, how does this potentially, impact? Like, does CBS know, like, who's going to be in the conference? Do they know, hey, they're getting Texas State, or do they know that, hey, they're getting Texas State plus a football only edition?" And the person came back and told me, "Look, they probably know who's coming into the conference. For the more important thing is how many teams are coming into the conference,
Yeah.
because they're selling a number of games. And as we've talked about, the identities of these teams are interchangeable for a variety of reasons, Texas State or Memphis or even UNLV. And we'll get to
Yep.
that in a bit, the possibilities on all those. But let's talk about other networks that might be involved. I expect the CW, who is a partner, in 2024 and in 2025, to have some games. I also think
Yep.
ESPN could come in, Wilner, with an after dark Friday night, Saturday night window in the Pacific time zone.
For sure. And I get back also on the basketball side, the tonnage available, the fact ESPN and Gonzaga have had a great relationship for a long, long time, and ESPN views Gonzaga as a very valuable piece and on its basketball coverage. So I agree, and he also don't discount the ESPN bet piece, right? The West Coast Chase games, both in football and basketball, have some value, viewership value for the gambling aspect.
Yeah. And I think for fans who are, we've been talking a lot about fan exhaustion and how the leagues and the conferences and the sports have put fans in positions where they have to have 4 or 5 subscriptions that they're paying for. And, I don't know what you're subscribed to in your household between the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, and college sports, but it starts to become cost prohibitive at some
Yes.
point. But I think some of the partners we're talking about here, CBS, certainly the CW over the air, may give Pac-12 fans a little bit of break. And
Yep.
the CBS and Paramount Plus, offerings will be simulcast. So you'll have the option to take one or the other. But I could certainly see somebody like TNT coming in too in a basketball way. I think it becomes very easy to forget about basketball, but I think of basketball, as you're pointing out, you've mentioned it twice. Basketball is a really important part of the Pac-12's future and their potential deal here.
You also wonder, this probably means Fox is out. It's hard to see Fox and CBS both going. So if maybe Fox goes all in with the Mountain West
Yeah.
in their new deal, or maybe Fox just backs away, in which case Mountain West could be in a world of hurt. The other thing I wonder is it possible that CBS down the road, a year or two, could sublicense some basketball games to Turner, right? They have a partnership on March Madness, and I wouldn't be all that surprised. Sublicensing is kind of a thing these days. ESPN sublicensing college football playoff to Turner. Maybe CBS would put some Pac-12 basketball on. So, a lot to still be decided.
It's interesting because Teresa Gold came on, did an interview with us, and we'll get her back on, the Pac-12 commissioner. for an interview here when the dust settles, and pepper her on this subject. But yeah, going back to one of our initial interviews with her on this podcast, she used the term that, she said they were looking for transformational partners, not just transactional partners. And we've talked about the exposure value. And I brought up Chris Standiford, the Gonzaga AD. He said they were looking for a partner. CBS fits that mold. It fits the mold of somebody who's going to help them be a little transformational and be, put a little glow on the conference. And the conference badly needs that. It needs the glow of some shoulder programming and halftime shows, and maybe even lead-ins and other games where there's a lot of promotion that is made. But I keep an eye on that transformational piece as they start to add other pieces to the puzzle here.
Yep, absolutely. Good point.
You have talked about the impact potentially on expansion a little bit here, but let's dig deeper. Texas State has got that deadline in the Sun Belt Conference coming up on June 30th. I kind of think, Wilner, that's going to be the next and big announcement from the Pac-12.
You think it's going to be a membership versus another media deal?
My hunch is that it'll be, we're talking about Monday, June 30th. Circle that on the calendar. The Pac-12 going to try to own Mondays here for the next couple of weeks, but
better than owning Friday at 5,
right? But Texas State, seems to be the odds-on favorite to be the 9th overall school and the 8th football playing member. But then beyond that, does this deal with CBS open other doors? Does it get Memphis's attention? Does it get UNLV in the Mountain West? Do they look over and go, wait a minute, if we want exposure, we need to maybe think about more than the money that the Mountain West is promising?
Could be. I still think for Memphis, it's a dollar decision. And nothing has happened to make me think that the Pac-12 is suddenly in position to make membership financially worthwhile for Memphis. When you consider, right, Memphis is making an above average amount in the American. I think the average in the American is somewhere around 7 million, I think, on media rights, but the longer standing members get more. So let's just say Memphis is pulling in 9-10 million in media rights. Then you factor in the additional travel costs. Is the Pac-12 going to be able to come in and say, here's 15 million Memphis, here's 14 million Memphis to make it worthwhile? I'm just skeptical of that whole piece of it. But we'll see. You never know.
I think one factor that I think about is the mediation with the Pac-12 and the Mountain West. And I've always thought about it framed around UNLV. But I'm wondering if the Pac-12, knows that it's not paying anything. Let's say they get out of there with $0 in poaching penalties. And let's just say now it's a real negotiation for the outgoing 5, where they're trying to negotiate down their exit fees. Is there more money in that so-called war chest that we've talked about? Is there more money to incentivize Memphis to make the move from a football-only perspective and then go play the rest of their sports in the Big East? There are some exit penalties for anybody who leaves the Pac-12 before 2031, right? So you have to pay, I think it's ×2 of what you received in the previous year's media rights, distributions. So there's some stiff penalties there. Would the Pac-12 be willing to go to Memphis and say, look, if you're waiting for a Power 4 invite, okay, we'll give you an exit for a Power 4 invitation. Plus, we'll incentivize you a little bit with money that we now is found money. I don't know. But I do think it makes me wonder about a football-only edition, and maybe there's an easier edition. Maybe it's UTSA as a football-only edition. Maybe it's somebody else. But I think if I'm Memphis, I'm kicking the tires on all this. I'm running out every ground ball. I want to see what is the Big 12 talking about? Is the door open there? UNLV is doing the same thing. But I'm having a hard time, Wilner, with the number of conference games in the Pac-12.
Yeah.
I think a football-only member would make a lot of sense.
Well, would that get them up to 9, right? So they can play. They could play 8 conference games. I still think that they are probably going to think about having a home and home. If they only have 8 football members, you got to play 8 games. So maybe you have a home and home each year and you just rotate it. But the $55 million, and that's what we're talking about for the poaching penalty, if they get out of there, even if they got out owing 10 million,
Mm-hmm.
they still have got a boatload of money there. Maybe they try to lure Memphis. I think Memphis, the only way it works for Memphis is if it is in a football only position. But then, if you're the Big East, you want to take them in all other sports. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. I don't know. And if you're Memphis too, like, I know the Big East is good, but man, playing with Gonzaga, if you're Memphis,
Yeah.
playing in that conference, that's because hoops is important to Memphis. So
Yeah.
be interesting to see where they come down.
Does UNLV, because I've talked to a couple of high level donors at UNLV, and I feel like they're a little bit disillusioned with their path into the Big 12, and they're talking about the potential invitation. That's what they're focused on, and I just don't know if you stay in the Mountain West, if you can get there if you're UNLV. I don't know if they go to the Pac-12 if they can get there, but does this give UNLV anything extra to think about?
I don't know. It depends what else there is and what else the Pac-12 can tell them about the media deal, perhaps. But I agree with you. I think that UNLV, if they want to get into a power conference or whatever the top tier college football is in the 2030s, they're better off getting as high up the ladder now as they can, because you get a better platform and that makes it easier to take that final step right up the mountain. They're putting themselves in position where they're going to have a much bigger leap, I think, to try to get to the top.
Yeah. I mean, otherwise, let's say they have a great football season and they beat Wyoming and, they beat San Jose State and Nevada, and, they're a one-loss conference champion in the Mountain West. I don't think they're getting to the playoff. And I think that is a real problem for them, because everybody's auditioning for what comes next.
Yeah.
What's next step. And you can't line up against the Pac-12 champion with a straight face and say you deserve to be there. Yes, you play in an NFL stadium. Yes, you've paid a lot of money for your coaches, but you've got to perform on the field. And I don't know. And if the money's not there in the Mountain West, that's a whole nother question. But
yes,
I'm thinking this, Wilner, like the Pac-12 adds Texas State. I think they actually could pause for just a little bit and then go, okay, we know we're compliant.
Yep.
Now we have the potential here to negotiate and maybe add, another member down the road or whatnot. I mean, I don't think it closes the door on the Pac-12 even a year from now, going after a different school in a different conference or somebody that makes sense. If there's nobody out there that truly adds value in the eyes of a TV partner, maybe you just go to 8 and then you pivot towards, hey, what are we doing in basketball? Is St. Mary's coming in or not? So I think it's going to be really newsy though in the next few weeks. Like, I know there's a lot of people out there that have been saying that for months and months, but I just think the next 10 to 21 days should be really interesting and really lay the foundation for what is really going to happen in 2026.
If they do announce Texas State on June 30th, it will be 3 years to the day that USC and UCLA left, right? Teeny bit of symbolism there. But we'll see. I think that they want to get as much done as soon as possible, but I also think that they're not going to be rushed into decisions either on membership or media rights if it doesn't work on their timeline.
Well, keep yourself locked in here by subscribing right here on the YouTube channel, or hit that subscribe button if you're listening on the audio podcast, and we will be back with an episode as news breaks, or next week we'll have a new episode. Read me at JohnCanzano.com. Read him at WilnerHotline.com.
Thanks, everybody.